Let me see if you can see this.
Oh,
Fuck with people who fuck with people I don't,
I don't fuck with.
That's right.
I know that's right. Hi, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Dr. Kia, and this is the Ratchet Roundtable podcast,
where we explore the defiant, irreverent, unapologetic ways that everyday folks get free
and thrive. On today's episode, we're talking to Dr. Ed Brockenbrough, author, scholar, and life-changing professor of education, both for me and for his many students over the years. His intrepid works center identity, pedagogy, power, Black masculinity studies, queer of color critique, and LGBTQ+ youth sex education.
We get into it, and Ed doesn't pull any punches. Here's our conversation.
So, Ed, we're here exploring how people use ratchetness, and by ratchetness we mean like unapologetically loud, joyful, defiant, resistant, ostentatious, indecorous, how people use ratchetness in life and in their work to get free and to create space as a possibility. And we really do want to know what gives you an unmistakable sense of delight. So I don't know if you want to start there, but that could be fun.
Sure. So one thing is I'm really into wearing t-shirts and sweatshirts that have messages on them. Oh, yeah. So I'm actually let me see if you can see this.
Oh,
fuck with people who fuck with people I don't,
fuck with.
That's right.
I know that's right.
So I have this one. I have a t-shirt that has a brown Jesus in the center, and it says, "Actually, I love the gays." I love wearing shirts like that, and I'll put it on, and then I'll forget I have it on, and then I see people looking at me. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot I have this on." Boom. And sometimes people will be like, "Oh, I really love that. Where'd you get it from?" And then other times I can see them uncomfortable, and that's fine with me as well. I have a shirt that says, "Your founding fathers were slave owners." Your is italicized, right? They ain't mine. That's y'all.
Own it.
That gives me delight. My gallery wall gives me delight.
You're stunning. Oh, thank you for showing it. Yes.
I change it up every couple of months.
Months?
Yeah, I get
wow.
I get
see what I mean about Ed's house?
I get impatient. I just want to change it up, and so
the
frames that have photos in them, I just change the photos around, so I get a little variety. I probably shouldn't admit this, but I love. There are no safe spaces, and it is what it is. I love walking around cities. During the daytime, I love to walk around to sort of get a sense of the demographic shifts and the sort of the vestiges of historical periods gone by, right? You can often walk around a city and kind of get a sense of not only who's there in this part of the city now, but who used to be there, right? And then it gets about just wondering, like, what happened? What are the processes that led to those changes? I'm really into urban history, so I love walking around cities during the daytime to do that. The part that I probably shouldn't say out loud is that I also love walking around at night, looking in open windows and checking out their interior design.
How else would you see it? How else would you see it?
I love doing that. And I admitted that to some of my neighbors on my block, and they were like, "Oh my God, yes, we do that too. We walk around, and if the window is open, then they must not mind." I'm just always curious to see how people set up their home spaces. I'm an interior design. I don't want to say junkie. I'm trying to stay away from those types.
Enthusiast?
Enthusiast. Thank you. I have tons on my Pinterest and
Your Pinterest.
Kia loves Pinterest.
Instagram. I follow just all these accounts, but I also like to see real live spaces as I'm walking
Mm-hmm.
down the street. So those are a few things that give me joy.
These are a few of my favorite things. Yes. Oh, that's so delightful. I need your help because I am bad at interior design and I'm bad at dressing myself. I'm basically bad at a lot of things. So I'll be sending you some photos. That's for later though. Thank you for sharing that. I just think that it's so important for us to anchor into joy, especially in moments like this. And, even small things, right? Little things that can create possibility. So yeah, so we're curious about I don't know how fast we should jump into, like, should we dive into the deep end?
I'm following you. Wherever you go, I will follow.
Question that we like to ask is, what is the most ratchet thing that someone has ever done to you or in front of you that felt like it created spaciousness for possibility or joy or liberation?
So first, I should probably just say how I define ratchet. Just so
Yes,
there's
please.
some framework to why I cite the examples that I cite. Um, to me, when I think about that word ratchet, it's what it means to me is disregarding respectability and valuing how that disregard for respectability either enables survival or allows for thriving, allows for transformation. And I think it's no coincidence that ratchet has sort of been reclaimed as a term and gotten mileage from Black folks and queer folks because of respectability is used to silence, erase, discipline, punish um, expressions of blackness and queerness, just as violations of the white supremacist, cis heteropatriarchal status quo. You know, uh, and I should say that I have my critiques of respectability, and I also appreciate the moments when respectability was one of the few strategies that folks who came before us had to make their way. I always like to sort of qualify my critiques of respectability with that, right? Because I think about my parents, I think about you know black educators that I grew up watching, seeing just how they were navigating such a narrow band of possibility for black folks uh, at those times, and so respectability was a way to secure some space, right, to be and to gain access to resources. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to give that qualifier while also noting that, a respectable Black life, a respectable queer life is, an unfulfilled one. Right?
Thank you.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I think we can appreciate the need for respectability, the use of it, the engagement of it
Mm-hmm.
at times, while also noting its limits and um, the importance for us to move beyond it. So, I think it's no coincidence that Black folks and queer folks have been the ones who have really given Ratchet um, some momentum uh, in this particular moment. So,
Mm-hmm.
that said, one
Boy.
it's like all the examples that are coming to mind are like Black queer examples. One,
Mm-hmm.
Please.
this was years ago
Man.
when I lived in New York City, and some some of the children were voguing on the train, and then somebody kept saying, "No voguing on the train, no voguing
No.
on the train." And it was like someone in the group was chanting
Yes.
as they were voguing, right? So it was fierce because it was like this simultaneous recognition that they're violating this kind of code of how to behave in public space while also voguing down in public
Mhm.
space.
Yeah.
I was like, that
Yes.
work. Uh, I can also remember um, when I was in Rochester, at the University of Rochester, um, I did a whole bunch of volunteer work at an HIV/AIDS community-based organization that worked with a lot of Black queer youth. One year, one of the young people passed away suddenly from complications of sickle cell.
Mm.
We had a service at the center, um, and all the adults. We were sort of there to not only support the young people, but to also bring our cultural knowledge of what a Black um, homegoing ceremony would look like and should sound like,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
there's a mix of like tradition and solemnity in the moment, right? But then, like after we had one staff member who was also sort of a part-time preacher, who gave a beautiful eulogy. A few of the kids shared remarks. It was difficult for them though, because which was interesting because these were young people who, um, for many of them, this wasn't the first time that they had experienced death,
Mhm.
given circumstances of Black queer life in Rochester. But it was a space where that hardness, the exterior, right, to protect themselves, you saw them drop that, and they
Mm.
just crumbled, right? So it had all of that, the like solemn tone of kind of a Black homegoing service. And then, like, after we got through that part and we went outside and set off balloons right in the air, um, one of the local house mothers named Kiki drove down in front of the center, started pumping um, church beats, like, and the kids just came out and were just like stomping outside. They were like
Yes.
stomping and voguing. and one of the directors had to be like, "No, okay, stop," because there were businesses next to our center, and they didn't want
Mm.
starting a foolishness. So then they just went into the back room that we had, and everyone vogued down there. But it was that shift from just again very solemn kind of homegoing going service, uh, being shepherded by Black adults who were all kind of steeped in a particular tradition, and then the kids just kind of flipped it and just got their life, uh, and it was a wonderful, I think, just release for them. Those are the kind of moments that come up for me because of both the way that they defy respectability, but are also joyous, transformative, you know. Um, yeah. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes.
That.
Yes, it made perfect sense and was delightful.
And
um,
I've always wanted to like go into a recording studio with a fierce house beat and just record. No voguing on the train. No
No
voguing
voguing
on the
on the
train.
train. Yes.
Go to a club and watch, someone watch a DJ pump the beat and just see the kids just turn it out.
Yes.
I feel like that's possible. And yeah, like maybe even in the near future, if you really wanted to do that. I don't know what your
True.
time is, but
True.
Aaron makes music. I'm just gonna put that out there.
I might have made a house beat in the past couple of months. I'll send it to you
Mm-hmm.
afterwards. I'd love your feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I I love. It's funny because I'm hearing subversion. I'm hearing remix to these respectability kind of standards that we're beholden to in a lot of ways. And your story about the kids no voguing on the train makes me think about the ways that Black queer people enact Dapper, the Dapper aesthetic. And I remember it must have been maybe 6, 7 years ago. I went to an exhibit at the SF MoMA, and it was about the history of Dapper, particularly from I mean, I don't know if there is any other lens than the Black lens, with with regards to how it came to be. But I'm thinking about Dapper Dan and the ways that there's a subversion of this expectation that people are supposed to be suited in a certain way and that it's supposed to be kind of corporatized. But even within that, Black people and particularly Black queer people have found ways to flip it and remix it. And I'm curious, because in California, I love being in California. Me and Maria were just talking about, I need to be out here for the sake of the sun and everything like that. But every time I go back east to visit, I'm struck by how Black folks in particular put themselves together. And just based off of the time that you spent on the East Coast, can you tell me or tell us what are some of your observations with regards to that, with regards to what you see about Black folks aesthetics, what appears to be Black queer folks aesthetics, through kind of that Dapper lens,
Hmm.
and how and what it teaches us about being Ratchet, right? Kind of linking it back.
So it's interesting. The first thing that comes to mind is the class dynamic. I see that Dapper aesthetic in Black queer spaces more often when I go to New York or DC than here in Philly, which unfortunately has the distinction of being the poorest of the large cities in the United States. Um, I, I mean, not that there aren't folks who rock that aesthetic, but I, s- I, s- I see it in more abundance in cities that uh, have a more visible Black middle class.
Mm-hmm. That
So
makes
that's the
sense.
first thing that comes to mind. Um, I also wonder how age mediates that. Again, my response is heavily skewed by what I see in Philly. When I go into spaces where there are younger Black queer folks in some numbers, they're not rocking that aesthetic.
Okay.
Yeah, they're rocking thin sweatshirts, hoodies, and jeans and boots, and um, so the class dynamic um, really is class and age are really prominent in my mind as I think about your question as mediating who has access to that aesthetic, at least in Black queer spaces. I will say, another thing I will say though is that I think what interests me more than the ways that Black queer folks rock that is the way that I see, um, and I should say too that when I think about a dapper aesthetic, I think about male bodied, male presenting people rocking it. Um, I've actually been intrigued by people who don't, to my knowledge, don't identify as queer, who rock that aesthetic. I'm thinking of a colleague of ours, Chris Emden, who's a
Mm-hmm.
very popular um, Black male educational scholar.
Chris
Uh,
is the Ratchet demic that came up in the
We
Ratchet
just talked
demic.
about
Yep.
that.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
one of the people who has made that word. He and Bettina and a few others have made that word, given that word some currency. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll see Chris in um, conference, like educational conference spaces, where there are a number of Black men who wear conservative suits, right? Who like that's the uniform. They're really holding on to kind of a respectability politics in terms of how they present themselves in a professional space. Uh, and then Chris will show up just like plaid with stripes, with socks, with the shoes,
Pop of color.
boom,
Mm-hmm.
boom, boom, and commands the space, right? Like,
Yep.
I think part of what makes it so striking is that, unlike, like, I've had instances. I should have given this. So there's this one. I don't know if we can say. Can we say
Say
AERA?
You can say
anything you
whatever
want.
you
This is
want.
Ratchet Roundtable.
Mhm.
The American Educational Research Association um, is the largest organization for educational researchers in the country, and they have an annual conference every like April or May. Uh, when I was a graduate student, I went one year, and my hair was in twists. I was rocking this like corduroy jacket and
Cute.
loud tie and jeans and boots and the socks. Like I was giving dapper aesthetic. No,
Down.
I'm not wearing a Men's Warehouse suit. No, thank you. I want to be comfortable. I want to be me. I
Mm-hmm.
I attended a panel session on the future of HBCUs, historically Black college
Mm.
universities. I asked a question during the session about what makes for a successful faculty applicant to HBCUs, because I was at the time considering applying to HBCUs once I went on the market. Afterwards, one of the panelists who was from an HBCU in, I think, Alabama, came up to me and said, "I'm going to follow up with your question. I just want to be honest with you. Um, that hair, this corduroy jacket, all this, they're not going to see you at an HBCU."
Mm.
And my immediate response was, "You know what? Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
being honest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for choosing to do it in a semi-private space, right? She didn't do it while she was on the panel. She came up to me
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
afterwards and said, 'Baby, this whole look, they're not going to go for that because of how just
Mm.
conservative they are." Right? But so it's in that same space where I see someone like Chris rocking a similar aesthetic and
Mm-hmm.
just taking up space. Um, and so that I find really intriguing, the way that um, when the dapper aesthetic is not attached to a body that's read as queer,
Mm-hmm.
how just the license, the space that it it gets. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think it underscores just how queer bodies still have to do a little more work, a little more fighting to
Mm-hmm.
gain entry into spaces um, that bodies that are read as straight don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the thoughts that come to mind when you bring. I think because also I would say too that when Chris rocks his, and this is no shade to Chris, I'm talking about just politics of how people respond to.
Absolutely.
I think when Chris shows up, he's dapper. If
Mm-hmm.
I show up in that same outfit, I think I'm read more as a dandy.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What you see as the differences?
Dandy, I think, is read as more feminine,
Mm.
right? As softer. You know, Chris, if you've seen how he presents, right? He brings the Bronx with him and tells you,
Mm-hmm.
and right, like his movements are movements that are the way he moves his body, carries his body, are ways that are read, I think, as traditionally black and masculine.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I, I mean, I was actually on a panel with Chris a couple of years ago after Bell Hooks passed, and um, uh, one of there was someone connected to putting the panel together who actually described me as soft and said like I had a soft presence, right? I was like, oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
Like, I mean, no shade. I'm comfortable with who I am, but it's clear that you're reading me in a particular way, and are actually
Yeah.
saying out loud that I have a soft presence, right?
Mm.
Um, so I think that's where I would make that distinction between someone like
Yeah.
Chris gets read as dapper. I would think get read more as a dandy. Uh,
Mm.
you know, wearing clothing that um, eschews a traditional professional aesthetic,
Hmm.
embracing, I don't, bright ties, and
Color and
different,
flair and
yeah, and
yeah.
that um, I don't know that I would have a harder time participating as fully and getting as well received as someone like Chris if I showed up as this, openly queer person in that same type of attire. Hopefully
Aesthetic.
that made sense.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
No, absolutely.
Thank you for
I'm
that breakdown. That was
yeah, no, for real.
really, really insightful.
And I would actually,
Yeah.
and now that I said all of that out loud, I would really be interested to talk to Chris about that.
Mm-hmm.
Get his take on just how people read him, because that's my take, but I would love to hear his take on how he feels that people read him when he shows up with the hats and the ties and stuff.
Yeah.
Very clearly departing from the way that a lot of our Black male colleagues show up in those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But it still seems to command respect. And so I would really be interested to hear how he makes sense of that.
Yeah. That actually ties into another question that I think is important. So, on the one hand, there's the who you are in spaces with other people and how you get read and what that sort of affords or constrains in terms of participation. And one of our other points of curiosity, and this ties into my thriving framework, is really to get into the conditions that allow you to simply be, the spaces where you do feel like you get to be whole and full, self-actualizing, and what that might help us understand about possibility in the world.
Uh, you might not like this answer, but uh,
There's no wrong answers.
funny. I was actually talking about this with my therapist the other day. I forget how it came up, but he asked a similar question about just where do I sort of just where do I find space and time to just be me?
Mm.
Mm,
I described for him a scene from The Women of Brewster Place.
mm,
Women of Brewster Place was a novel written by Gloria Naylor in 88, 89. Oprah bought the rights, the TV rights, and made it into a two-part TV movie. there are two characters, Lorraine and Teresa, who are lesbians, who move in, and um, people start talking behind their backs and all that stuff. There's a scene where Lorraine, who's like the less confident one, saying, "Have you seen?" says to Teresa something like, "Have you seen how they're looking at us? Have you seen, the whispers? I think they know." Teresa goes off. She goes, they, kind of like damn, damn, damn. She goes, they, you and your damn theys. You, when we lived in Lincoln Park, you thought that they were catching on to us, so we had to move to this neighborhood. And then we had our beautiful apartment there, and you said they were figuring out, so we had to move to this god awful place. This is the last straw. I'm not moving any place else.
Mm-hmm.
Your damn days. But I find myself, at least at this period in my life, kind of like Lorraine, where I'm constantly thinking about they, um, whether the theys are um, leaders at my university and what they're going to think about my teaching and my work in this particular moment, or neighbors on my street and what they might think if I, bring a date home, or family members if I'm posting something on Facebook um, that I think might catch them off guard. For me, I'm constantly thinking about the theys out there, which kind of prevents me from ever feeling like I'm in a space where I can just be. I mean, even now, I'm sort of, as I talk, I'm also thinking about the theys who will be watching this,
Mm-hmm.
and how they're going to make sense of this. Do I sound articulate?
Yes.
I have days in my head all the time, and so for me, I don't really I don't I have trouble perceiving a space where I am simply just being.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm actually okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that because it's just kind of the way I make sense of um, my life as an openly queer Black man, is that I have to be on guard for the days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's um, there are times when my awareness of the days uh, is really intense and can actually get in the way of me doing stuff. And then there are times when I moderate it, I minimize it so that it's like a low hum in the background and doesn't distract me from everything else, but it's still there.
Mm.
Uh, I have
Somebody
trouble.
with tinnitus that lands. So
Yes, it's like tonight. It's just that low hum, that low buzz in the background.
Always there.
Yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you for sharing that. And has there ever been a time when you were like less concerned about the days and more just in your just simply beingness, or do you feel like this has just always been the case?
For me, I think it's always been the case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's just kind of, that's my life.
Is what it is. Yep.
I should say that it doesn't prohibit me from experiencing joy, um, from connecting with others, from enjoying ratchetness, but just I do all those things with a constant awareness of the theys out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I mean, what part of what I'm always interested in moving towards is helping to imagine conditions that create more and more liberation, more and more spaciousness, more and more possibility. And also helping us stay grounded in what's real, real people's real lives and real stories. It's not really, we're not really moving toward utopia, like we're just, we're just trying to figure out how to build a different world, build something else. So, related to that, unless, wait, Aaron, did you have a question?
Well,
You
I
looked
did.
poised. Go
Oh
ahead.
my god. You see me. I mean, I'm thinking about. We talked about this, Kia, the ways that, for example, music allows us to be in a place that is closer to just being. For example, right now I'm listening to, you might be familiar with Serpent with Feet. Well, I'll put you on afterwards, but black queer man who makes music for black queer men, um, and yeah, I've been listening to he has he had an album that came out either last year or the year before called Grip, and he just released a sequel to it. It's called Grip Sequel, and as Kia knows, I've been getting my whole life to it. So I'll be in the office, this place where I am beholden to certain standards, and may have that social low hum, but I got my headphones on, so I'm in my own world, right? Getting closer to freedom. So I was thinking about what is maybe something that you've been listening to or enjoying from that front that helps you get to that low hum where you can get closer to just being, where you can kind of block most everything else out and you can just be, or as close to just being as you can get.
It's interesting because a lot of the things that I like to watch, listen to, um, have reminders in them of the days I was
The
talking.
days.
Like, I'm obsessed with a TV show on Apple called Severance.
Everybody, yep, I gotta get on it.
Um,
I gotta get on it.
and oh, child, it's a ride. Um, and it's surveillance is a huge part of the storyline, right? And who um who knows who you are and what you're up to, who doesn't, even as you switch consciousnesses. Um, right? Like these are people who like their consciousness gets severed, and so there's one consciousness that exists in one world and then another consciousness in the body, right? So double consciousness is actually operating in this really interesting way, um, and it's constantly being surveilled. Uh, or like I love listening to one of my favorite podcasts is Making Gay History by Eric Marcus. He's a
He's writing it down. Thank you.
gay historian. He did a lot of interviews in the late 80s, early 90s.
Wow.
For some books that he wrote on gay history.
Mm.
And several years ago, he started revisiting those audio recordings for this podcast.
Wow.
I mean, he has recordings with, I think, Sylvia Rivera and Ms. Marsha, and then, Vito Russo and I think Larry Kramer, and just in some lesser well-known
Well known.
names. And I get lost in it. But like the actual narrative though is about gay people navigating the world with
The
um
days.
yeah
TM.
yeah maybe I probably
That's the name of this episode. The days.
Right, the days.
The days versus the gays.
Yes.
probably the closest I get though to just it being my awareness of other people um who have potential power over me, my awareness of that being at its quietest is when I eat breakfast. because every morning when I eat breakfast, and I eat the same breakfast every morning, bran cereal, a hard boiled egg, and an apple. Um, I also listen to music, and so I will get a bit lost in Janet or the OJ's or who whatever. This morning I was on a old Destiny's Child binge of no 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 yes, like I went back. That's probably the closest I get to that noise being completely um,
Mm,
out of the picture.
thank you for
Appreciate that.
sharing that. Yeah. And the breakfast ritual. And you eat the same thing every morning, which I think is so delightful. Like just the consistency and the reliability of knowing I'm going to be eating these things today. Plus, the meal prep sounds really manageable. There's one that Erin came up with that I just absolutely adore. I think it's a really powerful question. And we had it in the pre questions, which is, what or who is helping you to love yourself more deeply these days?
Mm.
See the power of that question.
Um, this therapist that I'm seeing now truly gets intersectionality. Um, to the point where he will pose questions, and I'm like, "Oh, gag! Like I didn't realize you would pick up on that."
Okay.
Um, yeah, uh, and so he's just been a godsend. It's kind of weird for me to think, just given my um, love hate relationship with white LGBTQ plus communities, that um,
Mm,
someone who I'm pretty sure is part of that group has been someone who's really helped me to love myself more. And then I would say my trainer. Um, I was on sabbatical last fall. I was supposed to be doing a whole bunch of work, but uh, academic work, research, but I ended up focusing on getting myself together. So
mm,
put in the time and found a therapist. And then I also found a trainer, this um, white Italian American woman, South Philly. I live in South Philly. For those of you who aren't familiar with Philadelphia, South Philly was a traditionally Italian
mm,
neighborhood, and not always receptive to the blacks.
Mm.
uh, and then, just over the years, the children moved to South Jersey to get bigger houses with land, and so people like me come in and have made a bigger mix. But anyway, my trainer is this Italian American woman, 59. She's a grandmother, body yaddy yaddy. She kicks my ass, uh, but does it while like talking about her grandchildren, and we'll be talking about stuff, and just she said did the nicest thing right before the winter holidays. gave me gave me some chocolate covered pretzels, which were
mm,
so good. And I actually had to throw them out because I was about to eat all of them. And I was like, well, this goes against the work we're doing. But
mm.
this woman in South Philly who makes them, and they were really good. And she had a card that said, thank you for trusting your health with me.
Mm.
Oh.
Like, I mean, I've worked with trainers in the past. All of them have been men, none of them who would have done that.
Mm-mm.
And she actually made me buy some sleeveless shirts. I was showing up in
Mm,
shirts, and she said, "No, you need sleeveless shirts so you can actually see your arms getting stronger, right?" And I'll be doing an exercise, and she says, "Okay, hold it and look in the mirror." And I look in the mirror like, "Oh."
oh.
Hit me.
No. So I would say those two folks, and then the last group I would say would be my students. Uh, because I I came back this semester just feeling really out of it. Um, uh, and my students have kind of reflected back to me um, what they're getting from my classes. and just look at
Hmm.
oh, yeah, I actually do know what I'm doing. I've been teaching since '95. Like
Not
I
new to
know what
this.
I'm doing. I've been teaching longer than these young people have been alive, and I create a valuable space in my classroom. Um, yeah, I'll say that.
Hmm. That's beautiful. Going back to the trainer, I was thinking about my own experiences with health professionals and how rarely they, I think, I think that they respect the body as a display, but not the body as our home, oftentimes. And the meaning of, which can be so different for different people with different experiences, the meaning of being home in your body. So it's just really powerful to hear about a trainer who was like, hey, I understand that you're entrusting me with your precious self, and I understand the magnitude of that. That is really beautiful and powerful. And thank you for sharing that.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's a 59-year-old woman who's also a grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
I just think she brings a sensibility. I mean, when I'm in the gym with her, there will be other people who come up and give her hugs. She was
Oh,
almost like
yeah.
mom, right? And so it's like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you bring an ethic of care to this work that you don't always find in a trainer.
No, or in a gym, or
Yeah,
in the world of body change, right? You know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And your students, of whom I count myself one. Yes, adore you. Yep. You do. You do create possibility and meaning, and you make things legible. You really do. I never get to be in one of your classes though. So that's just on the, I guess I'll just have to go to Philly. It's fine.
I was like, I'm about to make a trip. Let me go ahead and honor the class real quick.
Yeah,
See what's going on.
spring trip, not winter. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
exactly.
What have
Yeah.
you heard reflected back about what you're teaching then?
Mm.
What's one thing that stands out, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. So I'm teaching two classes this semester. One is diversity and social justice in American
Mm.
K-12 education. The other is whiteness in education.
Wow.
Crazy time to be teaching those two classes, since those are the types of educational spaces that uh, this new administration is targeting. I think, but a few things that stand out to me. One is so both classes, and this is very rare at a place like Penn, both classes are predominantly students of color.
Mm.
And it's very clear to me that they appreciate having a black professor. And it's something that they don't often experience at Penn.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these folks, I don't know how they found me because they're not in my program or even in the School of Education. Some of them are
Mm.
undergrads, but I think they sought me out in part because they were looking for black professors. So seeing a black person in the front of the class is definitely important to them, and it's actually the reason
Mm-hmm.
why. Um, and this might sound a bit counterintuitive given the critiques I made of respectability, but it's actually why a couple of years ago um, I started going by Professor Brockenbrough or Dr. Brockenbrough or Dr. B. There's in the School of Education, most many of my white colleagues will go by their first name. I started off doing that and
Mm-hmm.
quickly noticed students of color and international students
Mm.
very intentionally calling me Dr. Brockenbrough, Professor Brockenbrough.
Mm-hmm. That
It's
honorific. Mm-hmm.
important to them that I be seen as and addressed as professor or doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so that's something, I picked up on from those students, and they definitely appreciate having a Black professor. Um, they also have told me that they appreciate the fact that I find a variety of ways to assess them. I don't do like you're going to write 3 20-page papers. And I said to them, when you write a 20-page paper for me, I'm the only audience for it. So um, I have them making short films and or podcasts on a theme related to
Amazing.
the class, so that they can, if they choose to, share it with the outside world. I do, um, in each of the classes, I have roundtable discussions where the people at the roundtable are giving the feedback, basically doing the peer grading. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I call it a biographical artifact in each of the classes, where they have to create some kind of visual representation of their experiences around the themes that come up in the course. And they've appreciated that. But I try to actually just find different ways to engage them and assess them. Um, and then the last thing that stands out to me is that um, they appreciate my awareness of the stakes. So the first day of each of those classes, I showed clips from right wing media outlets of classes like ours getting attacked,
Mm,
right? And say, okay, you know, this is what's happening in the world right now, that classes like this are getting this kind of attention and people are ending up getting doxxed, right? And so let's just be aware of that. And this is why one of my ground rules is that you can't record anything
Mm,
that goes on in class, and please don't post stuff on social media, because
mm,
something can just get taken out of context, and then all of a sudden all of us are getting doxxed. And so
mm.
the acknowledgement of what's at stake with classes like the ones I'm teaching is something that they've appreciated.
It
I'm
is so
so glad.
important to be. Mm,
No, all I was gonna say is I'm so glad from jump you had grounded us in there really are no safe spaces, because
mm. Yes, you did.
you sure did. I appreciate it. I had to think. I was like, you right.
I
Go
always,
ahead,
I
Kia.
always, I always say that when someone says, this is a safe space, I'm just like, time out.
Mm,
Mm,
This is not, when we're talking about power, we can't have a safe space.
mm-hmm.
Like we're talking about the very forms of power that put us at risk, and so that's
Mm-hmm.
a risky
yeah,
endeavor innately.
Absolutely.
yeah.
So we just have to be aware of that and figure out, how do we develop enough trust amongst each other,
Yeah.
make us feel comfortable moving forward. But let's not
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
talk about this being a safe space.
Yeah, I like the framing of relative safety, because you can experience various levels of, there's a, I would say, a constellation. I don't even know if it's really
Spectrum.
a spectrum, right? Around safety in specific, because I think a lot about, so I have a contentious relationship with the world out there. And I don't know if you've seen that little meme where it's like a little kid who goes, "Uh-oh, people, this is how I feel about the world." Like, oh no, they're out there, they're everywhere. So in my little apartment, in my little enclave, I'm like, relative safety, they're not in here, la la la, and I have snacks, and then
Mm-hmm.
then there's
Mm-hmm.
out there, and various spaces in the out there that have varying degrees of safety, for a variety of reasons, right? So I really do appreciate that framing, and I actually really appreciate the way you don't shy away from the stakes. I think
Yeah.
that it is so important to tell the truth, and to face the really ugly stuff, because when we avoid it, that's when we become susceptible, to its replication, to becoming, victims of it, or victimizing, you have something to say.
Well, and just for me, it's, you know, I don't have children, but it's what I imagine it would feel like if I were raising children and having the talk with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm.
Here are the ways in which the world outside our home is going to be dangerous for you. Might even create danger within the home for us. And so,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
let's develop skills to navigate that. I'm basically doing that in my classes, sort of having the talk with them about, all right, we're talking about whiteness in this class, which means that there are going to be people who will be very upset with us if they find out that we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And will
Yeah.
try to punish us. And so we have to just be strategic about how we conduct this course and the level of visibility or invisibility that we allow to the work that we do in this space.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Relative safety, less visible, fugitive, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So,
I'm struck by just over the course of this. There's things I'm picking up about the ways that you have perceived other people perceive you, right? The theys and how we've actually talked about a number of theys, right? We've talked about the theys with, you know, relative power to the spaces that we work in. And then I'm also thinking about the theys, which are your students. And I'm thinking about our conversation about aesthetics and how the people with power will oftentimes perceive, I don't want to say oftentimes, I think within the context of what you were talking about, I think you had said at one point certain people perceiving you as soft or uh, it's interesting to me because I'm thinking about all the ways that the people with power would perceive you as, or have named that they perceive you as something that is kind of like bad or not, uh, or kind of diminishing. Is the same, these kind of same descriptors are ways in which the theys being your students would see you as somebody who is relatively safer, right? Who is safe. So I just want to name that because I think that's a really, I don't know, especially when we see so many attacks on what we what we are learning is reality. It's refreshing to hear somebody say, "Hey, this is what is at stake for so many of us," right? And I think that there's a safety, a relative safety in naming that when many others won't. So I just wanted to share that observation with you. I think it's super dope.
Thank you. I also call it, so I had a book come out last August called Learning While Black and Queer. And one of the chapters that I think has the most relevance for this time, but it's been something I've been hesitant to put out into the world, is a chapter on a pedagogy of the closet.
mm,
I sort of think about the closet. The closet has often been theorized as a space that lacks power. It's a
mm,
space of sorrow and disregard and victimhood.
Mm-hmm.
repression. Mm-hmm.
And I sort of say yes, and the closet is a space where queer people have actually generated knowledge and shared knowledge with each other
Mm-hmm.
outside of um, the view of those who might use that knowledge against us.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of approach um, classes that I know um, could create a lot of hoopla if they get on certain people's radar as kind of like these closeted spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I lower the visibility. I create a language that those of us who are in the class understand. And so if you aren't in the class, you don't get it, same way that queer folks can sort of say things to each other in a public space and
Mm-hmm.
not queer, you're not picking up on what's going down. It's you just hearing you, Aaron, kind of repeat back some of the things you're taking about the conversation around the teaching and stuff. But and Kia, what you were saying about relative safety, I kind of think about it as kind of a closeted space that I tend to construct in my teaching or in my research so that those who need the info get it, and those who might use the information, the knowledge to persecute us don't know
Don't.
what we're doing.
Don't need to know. To me, that feels like simultaneously, it's this kind of, and I think we often occupy these spaces between survival and thriving, right? On the one hand, maintaining that fugitivity is a kind of a survival practice, and that's appropriate. We really don't need to invite more harm, into our lives and our existences. And it also is this abundance practice, this kind of thriving practice of creating a space where we get to simply be, right? Like everything is not perfect. It's not like the days aren't out there, the people, but like,
The people.
but you've created this beautiful container, right? And there's a mutual understanding and a mutual commitment that opens up possibility for learning, for connection, for expansion. It's really generative. And what I know about teachers like you and you is that has these ripple effects. So your students take that with them into their worlds and into their work. And I think in its own way, even though it's not like a piece of legislation that changes rights, right? In its own way, it creates these other sort of expansive spaces that may not necessarily be visible to everybody all the time. It is really, to me, to my mind, in the thriving ecosystem, in the thriving practice ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that. And I think one strategy for I love the image of the ripples, because I'm sort of thinking the ripples can move through the world and do the work, and people who are experiencing the work don't necessarily know the source of the ripples, right? And so that's one way to help protect the source. Like, 'cause I don't, I don't need, I don't need students citing me as the person who helped them do X, Y, and Z, right? You go out and do stuff in the world, and that makes change. That's great. And also, I'm not the only person who's having an impact on the students, but the but I have seen some people who they want credit, when their students are out doing things. They want
All that.
Cites me.
They want everyone to know that I produced that. I get all the glory. And that brings attention back to the source. And actually, I think one of my strategies is I actually don't need that attention, and not inviting that kind of attention helps me to maintain the space where I can continue to try to make ripples.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's very that sort of like non-attachment. It's giving Zen vibes, very like, oh, okay, we're existing and I'm offering, and you go out and you do you, and yeah.
I love that. It reminds me
big
of
breath.
Yeah, it's reminding me. I mean, you may have seen the movie Monsters Inc., right? Or maybe not. I don't know. It's a Pixar film. No, okay, for sure. So basically, these monsters, their job is to scare children, right? And they go through they go through different doors. Like there's a factory of doors, right? And they go through different doors, like finding, which child's door is this that I can scare them, right? And then at the end of the movie, they find out that
they come out of children's bedroom closets to scare them, and with nightmares, so they're nightmare monsters, and then the nightmares generate energy, right? There's something about
Yes.
the way that the fear is fuel, right? So
Yes.
when they choose a door, they're coming through a closet door.
Thank you
Continue.
for explaining that. That was. Thank you for filling in the blanks. I appreciate
Interesting.
that.
Yeah.
It is, but also the way that it ends in the first film is that these monsters recognize that they can actually generate joy for these children, also, right? And that can be its own fuel, and that there's a moment before the end where one of the main villains is like trying to go through all of these different doors, trying to figure out where is this particular child's door to their closet, right? And in a similar way of the ripples, where it creates these it creates this distance from the center, and this also fugitivity, and therefore this kind of relative safety. I'm thinking about that through the lens of the ways that you're creating these moments for students to take with them wherever they go, their own kind of spaces where they can be safe, right? Or safer. So,
well, and I definitely hear, to piggyback on the analog, you definitely sit with and engage with the fearful stuff, the serious stuff. And it very much sounds like you also bring in the possibility and the hope. You say, so this is what it is, but also there's this.
This is what it can
It's the
be.
same way that you reframed the closet. Yes, there's that. And I love that big and, all caps, big and, there's this. Yeah. And that gives me a tremendous sense of hope and possibility. And it gives me a sense of power, right? Yes, that shit is there and it's scary and it's, it's threatening and it's real. Like there is real danger. Big and there's also this over here. And we keep doing this and we can do this together. Like,
side note, I need to watch Monsters Inc. because just based on your description, the monsters sound like queer folks.
This is why I was like, I feel like there's an analogy baked in, and it's this imposition of a way of existing that the monsters also choose to shift away from, right? Yes. And then the giggles are more fuel than the screams.
Yeah.
And being told that you're a monster.
And that this is the role you can occupy in the world. You are confined to. Yes.
Ooh, I need to watch this.
Watch it. We'll have you back on if you like.
Yes. Or maybe we could even do a virtual movie night. No pressure.
Yes.
No pressure.
Yes.
Fantastic.
How are you feeling now? Sort of before and after.
I came in feeling excited. The technical issues didn't frustrate me at all.
Yay.
Lovely.
Good.
Lovely.
After all of us trying to teach on Zoom, and this was a piece of cake. And right now, I'm feeling excited and giddy, and honestly, a little disappointed that this is going to end soon. I guess I could just talk all night, but I don't want to keep you all here, but
well, no, that's why I was like, please, come on back.
We would really love a part 2. Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm just so grateful. I love seeing you. I love that we actually got to be face to face and voice to voice and connect in this way. And I'm so grateful that you agreed to be on our podcast as we launch it. So,
and I just have to say that I really admire how you have really taken thriving out into the world and created the spaces that you've created. So many people, write the dissertation and then go on to do the rest of it. It's like your dissertation gave you a calling and you actually answered the call and figured out how to move through the world and serve the call. in a way that's not the typical way we were all prepared to be, right? That takes courage and chutzpah and imagination. So I'm in awe of folks like you who get a PhD and you don't do the professoriate. You actually like, you know what, I can actually go over here and do work in ways that the academy just won't get, and that will reach people that won't be reached by an article in a top tier journal. I'm feeling
behind a paywall.
so those you just like that's the other thing that I'm leaving this conversation with is just questions, ideas about what are different ways that I can engage with people around the ideas that are important to me, especially just as higher ed caves in to threats. It'll be even more important for those of us who are in the academy to find ways to do work outside of it. So you're one of my role models, and I thank you for
Oh
that.
my gosh.
Yes.
That went an octave high.
What? I mean, thank you. You're making me cry. I'm feeling emotional. I'm feeling very honored. Thank you. Thank you.
You are welcome.
It's nice to feel like you think I'm on the right track, actually. So that's nice. Thank you.
I'm saying you created the track.
Girl, period.
Period. Yes, Aaron. Period.
This was a leap of faith. Aaron is my support friend. We came up with this, but Aaron is a big part of the reason why we're even here. Just like being courageous in this way. So I really do appreciate that feedback, that reflection back. It means a lot to me. So thank you.
I'm gonna just repeat something that has been making its way in a lot of spaces over the past 2 months, that we really need to invest in our community networks. Just get grassroots, connect with each other so we can mobilize our power to push back against what's raining down on us. We can't just we got to do more than just post our disappointment in Facebook statuses, right? We have to connect with one another and support one another and figure out together how we're going to create a new world. So let's just all stay on top of that and hold each other accountable.
Yes. I have actual goosebumps. Thank you. Okay, well, on that delightful note.
Actually,
all we got.
And one last thing.
Yes, please.
I don't fuck with people who fuck with people I don't
fuck with. Yes.
Ashe. Amen. Ashe.
That's right.
That's our closing thought.
Yes.
And with that, and scene.
Yes, Dr. Brockenbrough. That sweatshirt sent me.
Yes.
It was such a rich episode.
Indeed. Our conversation ranged from looking at neighbors' interior design through their windows to gay, queer themes in Monsters, Inc., to the children voguing on the train, or rather, no voguing on the train.
Yes, and I loved how we found elements of thriving even in places where we didn't necessarily expect to, like in his classroom where he created a really solid community, and he was really in that both and, like understanding what was at stake for everyone there, and why it's so important to tell the truth about the world, which is an abundance practice, and creating a context where everybody could kind of relax into learning together, but acknowledge, right, that it was both somewhat safe and always a place where people had to be brave. So it was like relief and community combined, and where they could enjoy each other and enjoy the journey, which is pleasure. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. From observing how people turn their domiciles into homes to creating a container for truth, bravery, and joy in the classroom, this episode has so much to offer. So let us know what thriving guidance you noticed. Are you inspired to take action? You can comment on YouTube.
And this has been Ratchet Roundtable with Aaron and Dr. Kia. Stay unapologetic, stay free.